What is going on, Small Gains family? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I wasn't initially going to talk about this today, but I've had this conversation 3 times this week with some of my people. So I thought it'd be a really, really good one to cover. So I've ditched my initial topic and we're going straight in to something that just felt a bit more topical. And it's maybe not the most fun and interesting thing to talk about. I should not be opening the podcast with this, but you know what I mean. It's not some really cool hack that's going to change your world. It's very much something that people might even consider a bit boring to talk about, but I actually just think it's so important. And you know, with me, I'm not going to stay away from the boring, unsexy. So today's topic is about how we won't necessarily be in love with our training every single week, and we won't necessarily make progress or PB every lift every week. Now, as someone that absolutely loves training, with a training age that is getting to the point where it's probably a bit prehistoric now, a slight exaggeration, but still, you get my drift. I am actually a person that loves running and loves lifting heavy circles. And when it comes to fitness, we obviously have people that are in a few different camps. We have people that absolutely love it and it's a hobby at one end of the spectrum. And then we have people that are purely just doing it for the long-term health benefits, not necessarily to get jacked, not necessarily to be the strongest, fastest version of themselves, but just to ensure that they can be a functioning, healthy human being and reap the benefits. Better heart and lung health, better sleep, better stress levels, better mental health, and obviously increased bone density. And then we've got people that fall inside that spectrum. So maybe people that do enjoy their training, but it's not their hobby, or people that kind of like it, but they kind of just do the box tick exercise. We fall into so many different camps. And I'd say for the most part, the people that I work with are more towards the side of the spectrum where they like it and it's a hobby. I'd say some people are 100% hard, love it, it's a hobby. Some people are that in between, middle to they enjoy it, but it's not a hobby, it's something they do to look after themselves, but it is nice. But what I often find that can happen is when I've been working with someone for a long period of time and they get past the newbie gain stage, which we're going to talk about in a minute, they then start to lose joy in training purely because they're not seeing the numbers go up every week, because they've almost set the wrong expectation in their head that they're going to keep progressing every week. And that's not their fault. It's more around the snapshot of what we see into other people's training online, but also our expectation being set when we're in a newbie phase of training and we are managing to PB every week. Because we can quite quickly go from lifting heavier every week, running faster every week, to all of a sudden just feeling like you've stalled and you've plateaued, when actually that's not what you've done at all. It just feels like it, and it can be really disheartening. And that's why a lot of people give up, because they either think that they're doing something wrong or that it's not worth doing anymore because they can't see tangible progress in the same way. And I think the myth of progress being linear definitely stems to what we are seeing on social media, because people will post training PBs. They'll post the fact that they PB'd at parkrun for 4 weeks in a row, and it'll just feel like everyone around you seems to be getting that linear progress every week, but you actually don't. Which is why I really do make a habit of talking about my terrible sessions as much as possible without being down in the dumps about it, because really the terrible sessions don't matter. I'm not getting paid to do them. I don't do them for a living, and neither do most people that listen to the podcast. Sometimes we will have shit sessions and sometimes we won't, and our progress won't ever be linear. And if it is, sometimes it'll only feel like it is in small doses and something might interrupt it. And again, totally normal. Now, I did a post late last year about bench press, and it was about how I grew my bench press over 2 years And that was 2 years of bench pressing every week without fail. I think I maybe missed about seven bench press sessions over 2 years. And when I say bench press sessions, I just mean a workout session with a bench press in it, a barbell bench press. I'm not counting the dumbbell ones in that. And when I started benching every single week, I was seeing real tangible increases in it. They weren't big increases because I already had a baseline level of strength. I was already consistent anyway. But because I'd gone from doing something more sporadically to doing it every single week for 2 years, it never got taken out of a workout block with my coach. It did mean that I made progress with it faster, but it's still not as fast as you think. And if you go on my Instagram and you find that bench press post, it's an Instagram carousel, it shows you how it looks like it plateaued for about 3 months. I got stuck at 50 kilograms. But what it wasn't showing was set volume, different tempo increases, different speeds of moving the bar, different numbers of reps, different amounts of set volume. And even then, the progress was marginal. However, it didn't mean that I wasn't making progress even on the weeks where I lifted the same amount of reps and the same amount of work, because I was still getting volume in. I was still accumulating volume. And because I had the right expectations from my training, I didn't get disheartened. But when you have an expectation that you're going to increase your bench press by 50% in a year, that's unrealistic. But if you've got it in your head when it doesn't happen, for most people that are past their newbie gain stage, they're not on gear, they're not a transmask person going from 0 to a full dose of testosterone, it's very unlikely anyone will be able to do that. Now, the current things that my progress has really slowed down on, that I'm focusing on at the moment, are my bodyweight pull-ups and my speed running work. So since I was in blocks of training for lots of different run events and high rocks, I haven't paid as much attention to pull-ups. And it means that I can't do as many unassisted body weight ones as normal. And that doesn't mean that I won't get back there. It just means that I'm in a period of time where I'm not getting an extra rep every single week. I think I've been getting like 6, 7 on my pull-ups for like the last few weeks, and I've not been able to add an extra rep. But if I add an extra one next week or the week after, that's still progress. In terms of my tempo running, trying to run a lot of kilometers at around 5:15 pace, which is a fast pace for me after the amount of endurance running that I've been doing over the last year. And holding that 5:15 pace isn't happening every week, because it's not just about the fact that it's hard work. It's also based on my stress levels and my sleep and my fueling and my recovery, and the fact that I have a full-time job and I'm only doing a speed session once a week. And so what I'm trying to get at here is that in the beginning stages of a running and lifting journey, at first you might find that you do just PB constantly, and that can last, I think statistically it's meant to last about 3 to 6 months. However, based on wavering consistency, it can sometimes feel like it lasts a couple of years. But then you will get to a point where you do start finding that you don't increase the weight or increase the reps every week like clockwork consecutively, because all of a sudden you're not a newbie and you're not inconsistent. You're a consistent person that trains regularly and has done for a while. And what consistency means is factoring in auto-regulation. Listen to the auto-regulation episode if you haven't. But it means scaling sessions for days where you don't feel 100%, pulling back when you're feeling fatigued or need a bit more recovery time, having a lower volume week when needed. Auto-regulation and being a consistent person that trains doesn't mean linear progress and being able to get extra weight or reps every single week on every exercise. There's too many variables. So once you are consistent, you're going to notice how those variables affect it and why it's not possible. And that's why it's important for us to have the right expectation. So as I've just mentioned, newbie gains. Newbie gains are when someone goes from absolutely zero training to then being a person that has a habit of training a couple of times a week, 2-3 times a week, let's say, for example. And what happens is our body adapts to that very quickly, which means we see very rapid improvements. And typically, as I said, it's within the first 3 to 6 months, but it does depend on your consistency. If you're very flaky and you just go to the gym like once every 2 weeks, or you miss a couple of sessions every month, then it could last a little bit longer just because you're not accumulating the same amount of volume as someone that would consistently go 2 to 3 days a week, But we will see rapid improvements, and it will feel like we are getting stronger and faster every single week. And to an extent we are, but to an extent our body is also just learning how to get more efficient in what we're doing. So we're not just, say, building strength, speed, and movement efficiency. We're also actually building confidence and conviction mentally. And we're getting more evidence that our body can do these things. And when we have more evidence and we're more confident and we do them with better conviction, then we are just going to get better at them. Confidence and mindset counts for so much within sports, within training. And when we're new to lifting specifically, our body is learning these movement patterns. It's learning squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, press, twist. And when we're learning those movement patterns, our body then learns to recruit those muscle fibers a lot more efficiently. And then we start recovering better from the sessions, which means that next time we go back, we're recovering and bouncing back quicker. So then our body's not as fatigued. So then we can lift more weight and go again. And it's a cycle. So we build more strength by putting the body under stress. The body then reacts to that and gets stronger in response to that stress. It learns to bounce back from it better, so we can then do more of it. And that is why when all of those things stop happening, or the rate of those things happening every week slows down, it's really easy to think that you're doing something wrong. But you're not. The rate of progress is just slowing as you're reaching that top end of your strength capabilities. And so you have to work harder to chase smaller increments of progress. And yes, that is chasing the small gains. So the reality check of newbie gains is that this phase will end for everyone. And that is when the harder work begins for longevity, because we're chasing smaller gains every single time. And the analogy that I always give for this, which is a really extreme one, is that if you take a 100-meter sprinter, so I can't actually remember what the 100-meter world record is for a sprint. I'm actually going to look it up while I'm recording this because it's going to annoy me if I don't. 100-meter sprint world record. So it's 9.58 seconds, and it has been since 2009, right? So think how many people dedicate every day of their waking life to training to try and beat that 9.58 seconds by a millisecond. So someone will get 9.57 and break that world record. In 17 years, is that the right math? Yes. In 17 years, no one has beaten the 100-meter world record PB. And these are people that wake up every day and get paid to try and do it. So if there are people with an infinite amount of money and resources that get paid to try and PB every so often, and they can't do it, that also puts it in perspective that we as hobbyists, novices, leisurely athletes, we're not necessarily going to be able to add 50% onto our bench press every year. And it's a really extreme example, but it does put it in perspective. So I hope that is a helpful analogy. When we pass the newbie gain phase, when we're a person that's consistent, the harder work actually starts with our strength and running journey. And that brings me on to the non-athlete reality of it all. I don't think I can get through an episode of Small Gains without saying it, but we all have jobs, we have families, partners, life stress, inconsistent sleep, We have so much more going on than just strength training, than just running. Professional athletes train 4 to 6 hours a day with lots of recovery protocols. They have their nutrition dialed in, and it is literally their job to eat, sleep, and move and make it their whole world. Whereas most of us are training, I don't know, 3 to 5 hours a week on average. Some people less than that, some people more, while managing everything else. And if we take muscular adaptation, so our muscles repairing, getting stronger, getting faster, getting more powerful, this happens in the recovery phase. And the one thing that is going to interrupt that recovery phase is life stress. And if you have a lot more life stress, then that's not going to help your recovery. And sadly, in the world we live in 2026, we have an awful lot of stress and pressure in capitalist society. And that means recovery is not always linear. And that means progress is not always linear. Some weeks we are just maintaining, and that is still success. We're maybe moving the same weight, we're running the same paces. It doesn't feel or look as impressive or as gratifying as the weeks where you have a golden week. Everything just seems perfect. You PB every week, you increase your lifts, you chase some extra reps, you run a little faster. Yes, those weeks feel awesome, but we mustn't forget to also celebrate the weeks where we just show up and we maintain, because the alternative to that is that we're not showing up at all and we're not doing anything. So then we're not maintaining. And this is where sustainability comes into our training. And this is also why we can't necessarily PB or progress every single week. And I think what I have learned from all of my training journey so far is that consistency means fluctuation, not constant PRs and linear progress. And because of that adaptation cycle that I mentioned, we put the body under stress when we're training, the body gets tired, we then need to recover. And in that recovery phase, we then adapt to get stronger. Our adaptation cycles can be interrupted by so many external things all the time. And when we're really fatigued, we're not going to PR. So an example for you lot with my training this week, I've had to fit all my training in Monday to Thursday. So that's been Monday, Tuesday strength, Wednesday run, Thursday today is going to be strength because I have a band rehearsal I need to be in a different city for on Friday. I have a girlfriend in a different city that I need to be with on Saturday. And I have a client doing a half marathon on Sunday. So this week, my level of fatigue from training is higher. My level of stress in life and in work is also higher, and that's not necessarily a negative thing. It's just because I'm making a very intentional effort to cram a lot into the first half of the week so I can have the benefit of doing all the other things that I want to do at the end of the week. It's a privilege to be stressed at this point, but it does mean that I'm not necessarily going to get loads of PRs in the gym this week because all of my training is bunched together and a lot of my work is as well. I am carrying more fatigue and stress this week than on a typical week where I don't travel as much or I don't have to cram as much in. And that's okay. It's all part of the journey, and it's all part of me making life choices that allow me to do all of the things that I love doing. Definitely a privilege. And the thing that I actually haven't mentioned yet is about workout programming. If your workout programming is good, it should include easier weeks. It should include deload periods or space to scale, and it should always allow space for varied intensities. Now I'm going to caveat this with saying this is very, very person specific, because I have a lot of people that I work with one-to-one that can show up with a hell of a lot of intensity to the gym every week and work really, really hard, near capacity, work very close to failure or at failure, and they will be fine most of the time. However, I also work with people where we need to be very, very careful about load and intensity, because if we slightly step over a line and they accumulate a little bit too much stress or a little bit too much fatigue, they're then going to write themselves off for the week. Now, obviously, I don't just program for people one-to-one. I also have my app, Superhuman, that are all pre-made programs. And then I have my ongoing hybrid training program, Fast and Ferocious. And Because I'm not doing these specific to a person, it means we have very conscious lower intensity weeks and very conscious higher intensity weeks. And we will also factor in lower volume and deload weeks in the programming. Whereas when I work with someone one-to-one, I talk to them multiple times a week, every week, and we have one check-in point every week where I can then make decisions on their programming and their intensity and their volume based on how they feel. So good programming is key. If you're currently following a program or you have a coach and the amount of stress and fatigue you're accumulating in the gym is all consuming, overwhelming, you're not recovering, you're feeling really stressed, you're constantly fatigued, then you also want to look at your programming as well as your expectations. And another thing that we want to factor in here with consistency being fluctuating is things like chronic illness. And I've obviously mentioned stress, but I'm also talking about chronic stress. And then we think about injury and mental health as well. If we have a chronic illness and that includes flare-ups, we're not going to PB every week. If we are chronically stressed because something really tough is going on for us personally or in work or in life, we're not going to PB every week. If we are injured, we're definitely not going to PB every week, you know? And that is okay. It's completely normal. So a couple of examples of how I would kind of put this to work in my own programming. If I have a runner that's testing their 5K and they do 2 runs a week, both of their runs aren't going to be all out. They're going to have a very easy run, and then they're going to do a max effort 5K. And then the week after that, they're going to be at a fairly low intensity because they went all out the week before. I'm not going to put them straight back into another 5K test because the stress on the body and the central nervous system, if they're going all out, is too high. Same for someone that's got a race. After that race, if that race is their primary race and they're going all out, they're going to be on a deload the week after. If it's a marathon or an ultra or a triathlon or an Ironman, they're going to have a fair chunk of weeks doing a bit of lower volume for sure. And then I think the final point I want to make on fluctuation and consistency is that some days the weight feels heavy even though it's the same. And it's not just about the physical fatigue on our body. It's also about our central nervous system. If we've accumulated a load of stress and it's just crept up on us and it's kept building and we've not realized, or we might have hormonal fluctuations as well. If someone is at a certain point in their menstrual cycle, at certain points in that cycle, they might feel stronger, they might feel more fatigued, they might feel weaker. It's different for everyone. If someone is on HRT and they aren't necessarily on a gel that they apply every day, but they have a bi-weekly injection or a monthly injection, within that cycle, their energy levels are going to fluctuate. And that can mean on some days, the same weight will feel a hell of a lot heavier. So to wrap this up, I want to talk about what progress actually looks like and what expectations we should set for our progress as people that aren't paid to train for a living and are more hobbyists or people training for long-term health. So the thing that isn't the funnest to say, but I'm obviously going to say it, is that progress happens over months and years, not days and weeks. Think about my bench press getting better. Think about me talking about my bench press earlier. It got significantly better over 2 years. But if you looked at snapshots of that, you wouldn't think it was. If you looked at a month out of those 2 years, one of those months would look like I was PBing every week. One of them would look like I was at a complete plateau and I was maybe even losing strength. If you're trying to get a faster 5K time, that isn't going to happen every week at parkrun. It's going to happen over the duration of a very considered and planned training block. And it's going to happen in relation to all of the other things that are going on in your life that might be stressing your body or your central nervous system. Progress happens over months and years, not weeks and days. Now I've got 4 other things that you might not consider as markers of progress because they're not very sexy. So I am going to remind you of them now. A really good marker of progress is just recovering better between sets and between workouts. It's having more efficient form. It's having less soreness. It's having the same weights feel easier at the same intensity that once felt really hard. So if, for example, you squatted 50 kilograms and that felt like 10 out of 10 for intensity, RPE 10, if you then squatted that same weight 6 months later and it felt like an RPE 7 or 8, that's a huge amount of progress there. It just feels easier. It's now not your top set. It's part of your warm-up set. Huge progress there. Another marker of progress, being able to show up and hit the same numbers again and again when you're actually maybe sleeping less, not fueling as efficiently, or you're more stressed. And whilst it's not good that you're sleeping less or you're more stressed or you're not fueling as efficiently as you might be on a good week, it does mean that you're just stronger because your body isn't running in tip-top shape, but you still can do it. Again, a marker that you are a stronger human. Maybe the most overlooked one, but the one that a lot of us will never take for granted if we've had an injury, is just injury-free training. Injury-free training is progress. If you're a person that's had loads of aches and pains or niggles, or you're a person that's had any really serious injuries, if you go through a long period of time without getting any of that, that is a huge amount of progress. And I need to touch all the wood everywhere around me when I say this, but I was recovering from a broken ankle 2 years ago. And in the same year, I had a calf crush injury. And the year before that, I had an Achilles injury. I have almost been 2 years completely injury free. And that is huge for me. We know that I love a freak accident. We know that I'm very clumsy. But the fact that my body is stronger and more resilient in so many different ways is reducing that. I'm still doing lots of clumsy things, and I'm still probably doing things that could turn into a freak accident because I have ADHD and bad proprioception. But I have definitely noticed any time that I've like maybe slightly tripped over something or rolled my ankle, that might have been an ankle sprain and wrote me off for 12 weeks. And my ankles are so strong and resilient now, and they can handle a lot of impact, is that if that happened, I would just shake it off and be like, oh, that could have been nasty. And then it's always fine. Injury-free training 100% is progress. And then the final metric, the most cheesiest one that I remind all of you of every single day, especially the people that work with me one-to-one, the ability to constantly show up is literally the most important metric of progress. If you're showing up consistently every week, more often than you aren't, over a long period of time, that's what progress actually looks like on a sustainable training journey. All right. As always, this episode was so much longer than I planned it to be. Apparently, I just love to yap at 6 a.m. I've started recording these a lot earlier because my new assistant, I guess she's not new anymore, Melissa, she then schedules this and uploads it for me. So it puts a little bit more pressure on me to just get up and get it done, which I definitely need. All right, closing thoughts on not PRing every week. If you're a person that is well past the newbie gains phase of your training journey and you try and go beast mode and PR every week in the gym or on the running track, you are going to run into overuse injuries and most likely end up burning out. The goal is sustainable improvement over years, not just a week or a month. Long-term health, longevity in your training, being able to do this for ages, being able to have a great quality of life as you age. And when you are looking at one session in isolation that didn't feel like its best, remind yourself, track the trend, not the individual sessions. If 8 weeks ago you were doing 3 pull-ups and now you're doing 5, that's progress. Yes, it's only 2 reps, but accumulating 2 more reps over 8 weeks on a very hard bodyweight movement is awesome. And the better you get and the stronger you get, the smaller and more marginal those gains are. And the weirdest thing about setting expectations for our training is sometimes we will set all the right expectations and our body will continue to almost trick us or surprise us in the sense that our absolute best lifting or running sessions might come after the most terrible high stress week with little sleep and not the best nutrition. Training can just be weird like that. And sometimes on the days where we feel like everything is locked in and we should feel unstoppable, we might just have the worst session and it will suck. And you know what? Training just be like that. And that is okay. And I think that will do it. So if you've listened to this and you've thought, I have had the complete wrong expectations in my head about my rate of progress and about my training, but now I definitely know what I should be expecting, the expectations I should be expecting on myself, there might need to be a mindset shift. And if you've maybe realized, well, I don't actually have a structured plan that takes into account intensity, progressive overload, volume, deloading, auto-regulation, then you're probably going to need one. So if you would like a solid program designed by your friendly neighborhood transmask leisurely hybrid athlete, you want to go to the show notes and check out my workout program app, Superhuman. It has a ton of programs on there for different training styles, for different abilities, beginner or intermediate. Whether you want to just lift or whether you'd like to lift and run, there will be an option for you. And I'll also leave a 50% off code in the show notes if you want 50% off your first month, so you can give it a go, see if it's your flavor. No contracts, stay as long as you want, leave whenever you want, come back. It's a lovely vibe. We're currently just having a lot of chats about Muna in the community group at the moment because they're just getting ready to release an album and their new song came out yesterday and it's a banger. I think it's a grower, but it's definitely I listened to it 7 times in a row in my studio yesterday in headphones, and it was so nice on the ears, and I love those lot. I can't wait for them to tour again. One of the best shows I've ever been to, for sure. Anyway, I digress. Have an amazing rest of your week, Small Gains family. Take it easy. That is me out. Love you.